The Dawdlers' philosophy.
Snippets. Just a taste.
So, let's talk briefly about a few of the considerations of some of the argumentation theorists before we get into a little bit more of what we have done with it. One of the things that's a big deal in just kind of the structure of argument in general, I think, is the pro and con. When they do competitive debate, etc., that is an enshrined structural necessity that they do. We have our resolution, and we have someone who speaks in favor and someone who is opposed.
Right.
When someone in the airport is making an argument as to why they shouldn't have to be the one who yet again takes the kid to the bathroom, but instead should be allowed to sit on their phone and watch the congressional testimony.
Ooh.
The person who puts forth the request, demand, claim would be taking this pro role, and then if anyone wanted to dispute that, they would be in another role. So are we willing to accept that as a structural necessity of arguments? That there's always a proponent and opponent? I kind of think so, but I also hesitate to ever make necessity claims.
You're stuck. You fucked yourself. I think I mean that's sort of a big question right at this stage of the episode. I don't know if that's a place. Is that a road you want to go down? Really?
Yeah, we can just throw it out there and come back to it probably after we
and
talk
that's a
about
fun
the
one
details.
too.
And because one thing that would make that even more relevant is that if, or to the extent, we chopped things up that way, and if one of our concerns was making some discourse norms, would there be different rules that applied to the person who puts forth a claim and the person who disputes, etc.? So that's one of the high-level things that we talk about in argumentation theory. Another is the work from J.L. Austin through our buddy John Searle on what they call speech acts and the pragmatic aspects of communication, which in this case does not mean pragmatic in the American pragmatist James Dewey Peirce sense, but rather means the non-semantic aspects that accompany production of a text, like body language, assumptions of what people do and don't know, the force, is the person making a joke, are they making a demand, are they making a request, what they call those different types of elocutionary or locutionary forces, etc. Whatever is not contained in the meaning of the words or the sentence, but rather environmental factors that contribute to the production of your argument? Or do we want to view the goings-on more like what they call the CRC model, the claims and accompanying reasoning? Is it more like that we are attempting to access propositions, these abstract semantic entities that sentences attempt to refer to, and that we try to purify argumentation from these pragmatic factors, so that these are two, again, kind of large scale lenses that different argumentation theorists look through. The extent to which they're concentrating on the entirety of the speech act and everything that comes with it, or if they're trying to be more sort of logical and abstract and just talk about the propositions, Joe Friday. Just the props, man.
That's pretty good. Okay. That's all interesting and good for me, but I feel like I need just a little bit more. Is there more that you're heading towards?
Sure. A related thing is an old-timey word from our buddy from a while ago, Aristotle, who talked about, I may be pronouncing it wrong, enthymemes, which has nothing to do with Richard Dawkins. But the enthymematic character of arguments, which again can be debated, the extent to which it is necessary or ever present or is only common to varying degrees. But the enthymemes are arguments that have tacit premises. And I think that the way I look at things, there are always going to be an indefinitely vast number of enthymematic premises in any argument, especially to the degree that I care about things like definitions. We will never define all the terms. You're going to rely on a connotation base, on a semantic groundwork almost all the time. You're going to rely on common patterns of inference. You're not going to always spell out your logic explicitly. You're going to rely on, for example, another thing we either have or soon will talk about, all these ceteris paribus clauses. Well, yeah, the match will light when struck if the humidity is this and the prevalence of oxygen in the atmosphere is Y, and so there's always, I think, accompanying an argument, a potentially an indefinitely large enthymematic accompaniment that is potential grounds for clever disputants to attempt to make relevant at any time. That even if, right. So you can always, I don't know, if you want to phrase it this way, it's a way to weasel or something. All right, you don't have any problems with the explicit premises of your argument, but you are trying to slip under the rug. You're trying to smuggle in this premise that you haven't stated but need in order to move from 3 to 4, blah, blah, blah. So that's a big deal and it helps to have labels for things in order to talk about them subsequently. So that's another thing we can learn from argumentation theory and watch for as we're considering arguments. And then finally, just what's the point? What's the goal? Where is an argument headed? And that's where I suppose our two bugbears from the beginning can come up. The egalitarian would say, well, if to the extent there's a purpose in arguing at all, it's maybe just for fun or to pass a philosophy class or to write some poetry in a strange way with numbers next to the lines, or the dogmatist I don't think sees much of a point. But anyway, a distinction that gets brought out in some of the argumentation theory literature is the difference between resolving or settling. And that's a large and relevant pragmatic difference in the way humans behave and will change the way systems evolve subsequent to arguments. Have they merely ended the debate? Well, they're kicking us out of the lecture hall. We've got to go. It just ends where it ends. Or we're going to agree to disagree. That would be what they call settling. For a resolution, the way I understand the terms, would entail a genuine agreement as to the local conditional status of the conclusion based on the argument. All right, well, I get it. If I accept these premises and those definitions and these rules of inference, then that conclusion appears to follow, and I'm going to adopt it with confidence level X for now until I hear a better one or do some further research, whatever. That any disputes that arise in the course of the argument are genuinely resolved.
Okay.
That's the kind of ending I like. Don't just settle. Let's not settle for settling.
Not settle for settling. I think settling no one would like, except for the person who's losing, who knows their side of the argument is not holding up or whatever. But resolving, if you're looking for agreement, I think resolution is the goal. And then I kind of want to go over speech acts and propositions one more time, just because to me, you've got resolve and settle, and I think I know where I would prefer, and I think most people would, well, that's not true, but resolutions would seem what you want. Whereas these, court hearings or whatever that we've got with Kavanaugh and everybody, they're probably just going to settle because, majority wins or whatever. They're not actually going to sit there and, try and work it out together. It would probably take too much time, or who knows. But the thing is the speech acts and propositions, that was pretty interesting to me. Speech acts, it sounded like you were pitting them like, do you want one or the other? Am I correct?
I don't know about one or the other. I think that everyone will agree that actual arguments take place in speech act terms. So another way to distinguish the two is speech acts are actual and propositions are virtual, or speech acts exist and propositions don't. Speech acts are the events that happen in space-time, in world, whatever. Right. When I say...
Premise 1. All men are mortal.
That's a speech act. I may or may not, in tokening that speech act, be successfully referencing a proposition, which is a more abstract semantic object in a sort of Platonic sense that some people believe in and some people don't.
Okay.
Or some people take the instrumentalist version towards and say, well, no, there aren't propositions, but it's still useful to talk as though there are for various purposes.
Okay.
And one of the standard things that usually comes up in discourses about propositions are alternate languages and the phrase, say the same thing. So there are various...
Wait, can I
pragmatic,
quickly,
behavioristic... Oh, yeah, okay.
I'm just... when you say the same thing, you could say two languages get, they have, like, share a common abstraction or something like that. Like, there's an abstraction that the two then, in the concretization of their speech acts or something like that in different languages, they all both kind of like go back, like they're a lineage or something, and they go back to a point where they share something in common. Is that what that's trying to get at?
I don't know about the going back to aspect. I think it's contemporaneous.
Right, but
I was saying, like, there are various motivations to want to be able to say that an English speaker and a German speaker both think that snow is white or whatever.
Pass
Even
the
though
butter.
If you ask them to express it, and one says snow is white and one says Schein and Weiss or whatever, I don't know very languages, but you make your favorite example, pass the butter versus blah, blah, blah in Chinese, that they functionally equivalent, that we want to be able to talk about people as having some sort of shared doxastic framework. So that's the role that propositions play.
Okay.
Whatever it is that is shared by Snow is White and Schein and Weiss, they both mean, the proposition that English speakers token by saying snow is white.
Okay. Yeah. I just wanted to kind of go back to that one. But you pretty much have in your, just to kind of quickly, because you've gone over a number of little things, but just some of the background, talked about descriptive versus normative, talked about pro and con and asked if it was necessary, but you're not sure if because you don't include necessity necessarily in your sorry. You don't include it, period. I don't know what you don't include it in. No, joking. And then we got some speech acts and propositions, some enthymemes, and then we want to have resolution or we want to settle. Settling is you're getting kicked out of the bar. Resolutions are someone goes, okay, I agree. My argument stinks or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to touch on that because that's, just like we have in the prior episodes.
Some of the super basics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which to me, they're brand new. So I don't know how, you know what I mean? To me, it's like basics, It's like, you put me in like a fancy French kitchen or something and be like, okay, I want you to make a whatever, whatever the French make and be like, it's basic. And I'd be like, okay. Popovers. Anyway, are those French? Whatever. Doesn't matter. We're moving on. Unless you feel like you want to
pop over to my neighbor's house sometimes.
Jesus Christ.